Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News Program, broadcasting to you live from the capital, Algiers. To the headlines. Algeria has annulled its 2013 deal with France that exempts visas for diplomatic and service passport holders, accusing Paris of breaching its laws and violating bilateral agreements. Also not news in Gaza, dozens were killed or wounded in brutal Zionist massacres across the Strip, as EU Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera admitted the situation there amounts to genocide. And later on, the Kremlin says Putin will soon meet Trump, a day after hosting a White House envoy, but maintains conditions are nowhere near ready for talks with Ukraine's President Zelensky. Welcome back to the program. First off, in our news tonight, in a sharp rebuke to Paris, Algeria has annulled the 2013 visa exemption deal for holders of diplomatic and service passports. The French embassy's chargé d'affaires was summoned Thursday to the foreign ministry, which emphasized that Algeria reserves the right to condition the granting of visas to the same requirements that French government imposes on Algerian nationals. This represents a strict application of the principle of reciprocity that expresses, above all, Algeria's rejection of French attempts at provocation, intimidation, and negotiation. Algeria has ended the free cession of state-owned property to the French embassy in Algiers, citing the absence of similar benefits for its own mission in France. The foreign ministry said the move seeks to restore balance and reciprocity in relations with Paris. Algeria says it has reviewed French President Emmanuel Macron's letter to his Prime Minister and the explanations given on August 7th to its embassy's chargé d'affaires in Paris. According to the Foreign Ministry, the letter absolves France of any role in the deterioration of the ties, placing full blame on Algeria.
Algeria wishes to remind once again that it has never been behind any request to conclude a bilateral agreement that exempts holders of diplomatic passports and service passports from requiring a visa. Rather, it was France, and France alone, that initiated this request on several occasions. By its decision to suspend this agreement, France has provided Algeria with the appropriate opportunity to announce, from its side, the annulment of this agreement in a simple and clear manner. In accordance with the provisions of Article 8 of this agreement, the Algerian government will notify the French government of this action as soon as possible through diplomatic channels. From now on, visas granted to French holders of both diplomatic and service passports will be subject, in all respects, to the same conditions imposed by the French authorities on their Algerian counterparts.
The statement also accused France of violating its own laws and breaching 3 bilateral agreements signed in 1974, 1994, and 2013.
The letter seeks to portray France as a country deeply concerned with respecting its bilateral and international obligations, and Algeria as a state that constantly violates its own. Once again, nothing could be further from the truth and reality. In this case, it is France that has violated its own national legislation. It is also France that has failed to honor its commitments under the 1968 Algerian-French Agreement on the movement, employment, and residence in France of Algerian nationals and their families, the 1974 Algerian-French Consular Agreement, and the 2013 Algerian-French Agreement on the visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and service passports. Furthermore, it is France that has made the 1994 Algerian-French Agreement on the readmission of Algerian nationals with a legal status in France the sole and exclusive focus of its actions, an agreement that France has distorted and diverted from its true objectives. Finally, it is France that has freed itself from the obligations undertaken under the 1950 European Convention on Human Rights.
Algeria says that since the crisis provoked by France broke out, Paris has responded with force and escalation, disregarding that Algeria will not yield to pressure, coercion, or blackmail.
Since the outbreak of this crisis, caused by France, the latter has chosen to manage it through force. It has resorted to threats, warnings, and ultimatums, ignoring the fact that Algeria does not yield to any form of pressure, coercion, or blackmail, regardless of its origin or nature.
The dynamic movement of the Algerian community in France has condemned the French president's letter to his prime minister as a stigmatizing and one-sided move. It denounced what it called a punitive strategy, suspending bilateral agreements, undermining consulates, and exploiting migration for political pressure, warning that such tension harms the interests of both nations. Talking about a different matter now. Speaking at a UN session on eliminating the spread of weapons of mass destruction, member of the Algerian Permanent Mission to the UN, Toufiq Al-Eid Koudri, reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to their total elimination and its readiness to work with all partners to fully implement Resolution 1540. The Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Salma Bakhta Mansouri, arrived Thursday in Pretoria, South Africa, to preside over the 10th session of the Steering Committee of Focal Points of the African Peer Review Mechanism.
In the coming 2 days of our session, we'll consider a number of important issues, including the review of nominations to the panel of eminent persons, which remains a cornerstone of the APRM system. We'll also examine key updates on institutional management and financial execution, as well as the APRM statutory calendar. These deliberations must be guided by a dual imperative. First, to preserve the strategic credibility and independence of the mechanism, and second, to ensure that the use of our resources is efficient, transparent, and fully aligned with the values of accountability and good governance.
In Gaza file tonight, daily Zionist massacres continue under a shroud of international silence. Since early Thursday, at least 42 Palestinians have been killed and others wounded as occupation forces bombed several areas and opened fire on starving civilians. Similarly, 2 children, including a baby, died on Thursday morning from malnutrition caused by the Zionist occupation starvation policy in Gaza Strip. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, the death toll from famine and malnutrition has risen to 197, including 96 children. The ministry stressed that these are only preliminary figures as the occupation persists in using food deprivation as a weapon of war, deliberately worsening the humanitarian catastrophe facing Gaza civilians. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said Thursday that Gaza is witnessing the world's highest monthly rate of acute child malnutrition, with hunger-related deaths rising as humanitarian conditions continue to deteriorate.
In July, malnutrition is widespread and hunger-related deaths are rising. In July, nearly 12,000 children under 5 years were identified as suffering from acute malnutrition, the highest monthly figure ever recorded. So far this year, 99 people have died from malnutrition, including 29 children under 5. These reported numbers are likely underestimates.
On a similar note, EU Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera has become the first commissioner to break the bloc's official stance by saying that displacement and killings in Gaza closely resemble genocide. In an interview with Politico, The Spanish politician said, what we are seeing is a specific population being attacked, murdered, and condemned to starve to death, which clearly resembles a situation of genocide. Protesters in Slovenia's capital, Ljubljana, marched demanding stronger measures against the Zionist entity after the government banned imports from the occupied Palestinian territories and approved more aid for Palestinians. Waving Palestinian flags, they called for an arms embargo on the Zionist entity. The water crisis in the besieged territory of Gaza Strip is worsening. Many residents, already ravaged by hunger, are forced to walk long distances through devastated areas each day to fetch water. Nabil Khazin reports now.
As the first light of dawn breaks over Gaza, the air is already thick with heat. Inside the cramped tents like this one, where Rida and her 7 children sleep, the temperature rises even quicker. Outside, the humidity presses down like a heavy blanket, making each breath feel thick, but Rida's love for her children burns bright. Though, with water scarce, it feels like nothing can ease their suffering, as their small bodies struggle in the suffocating heat. Yet she keeps going, relentless, doing everything she can, as the sun climbs higher and the day drags on.
It's very hot because of the nylon of the tent and the sun. It's so hot that I pour water on my children and try to cool them down by fanning them with a tray. There is no electricity, no fan, nothing. All day long I try to cool them down with a tray. I'm afraid something might happen to them.
This is just another hot summer day for people living in Gaza, where life is an everlasting struggle. While global attention has focused on starvation in Gaza, where after 20 months of a devastating war, aid groups say the water crisis is just as severe. Many have to walk long distances to collect water, which is often polluted and unsafe to drink. The wells are contaminated by sewage and chemicals from the rubble around them, causing many diseases.
The situation is nothing short of catastrophic. I mean, we see a systematic dismantling of wash infrastructure, and it's just happening in front of us. We see people basically starving, they are dehydrated, they're desperate, and now they are left without water as well, which is very, very much concerning. Just giving an example of a recent wash assessment, which we have done together with the wash cluster as well in Gaza, shows that 96% of the people, of the households, are facing moderate to severe water insecurity in Gaza right now.
Yet despite everything, people in Gaza continue to endure, holding on to hope and doing whatever they can to care for their families.
Switching focus to a different matter now, the United Kingdom and Western Sahara have reaffirmed the need for a just, peaceful and mutually acceptable political solution that upholds the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. The call came during a meeting at the British Foreign Office between Sahrawi Foreign Minister Mohammed Yaslim Baysat and UK Minister of State for the Middle East and North Africa Hamish Falconer, held at the letter's invitation. The Sahrawi side voiced hope that the United Kingdom will use its influence to push the UN-led peace process forward. Foreign Minister Mohammed Yaslim Baysat urged Britain to play an active role in promoting peace, reconstruction, and sustainable development in Western Sahara once the conflict ends. Venezuela has reaffirmed its unwavering support for the Sahrawi cause and the Sahrawi people's right to freedom and independence. The pledge came during an event marking the 43rd anniversary of Venezuela's recognition of the Sahrawi Republic, where Deputy Foreign Minister for African Affairs and Sahrawi Embassy Chargé d'Affaires in Caracas highlighted the deep historical ties between the two nations. All the way back to Algeria, Army General Said Chingriha, Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, inaugurated on Thursday the new headquarters of the Territorial Air Defense Forces Command. In his speech, he stressed the command's vital role, noting that the profound changes shaping today's battlefield pose serious challenges even for the world's most powerful armies, demanding constant adaptation and readiness.
يسعدني بهذه المناسبة الكريمة أن أشرف اليوم.
On this occasion, I wish to express my joy at presiding over today the opening ceremony of the new headquarters of the Territorial Air Defense Forces Command, and at meeting again with the commanders and personnel of these forces, to whom we pay great attention given the nature and specificity of the vital missions entrusted to them.
Moving on to the war in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump will meet in the coming days, marking the first summit between the two leaders since 2021. Kremlin advisor announced Thursday the news came a day after Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff met Putin in a bid to seek a breakthrough toward ending the war in Ukraine. In a similar note, as the deadline set by U.S. President Donald Trump to impose more sanctions on Russia is approaching, the relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to draw intense scrutiny. This comes at a time when the conflict is heading towards a more aggressive path amid hopes for reaching a ceasefire. Usama Ayadi has more.
As the clock ticks towards a critical sanctions deadline, the relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to draw intense scrutiny.
We just have to be careful.
A timeline of their interactions and statements regarding the Ukraine war reveals a complex interplay of diplomacy, pressure, and strategic maneuvering.
The war should have never started. If you had a competent president, which you didn't, the war wouldn't have happened. The war in Ukraine would have never happened if I were president.
Trump and Putin engaged in a series of diplomatic exchanges aimed at de-escalating the conflict. Putin showed openness to discussions with Trump on issues like the Ukraine war and energy prices, while Trump claimed both Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed a desire for peace.
We have a meeting with Russia tomorrow. We're going to see what happens.
As the sanctions deadline approaches, the evolving relationship between Trump and Putin remains a focal point of international attention.
With the current US president, I have always had business, exclusively business, but at the same time, pragmatic and trustful relations. I can't disagree with him that if he was president, if his victory was not stolen in 2020, then maybe there would not be the crisis in Ukraine that arose in 2022.
With several unsuccessful rounds of talks between Russia and Ukraine to put an end to the conflict, there is lingering skepticism about how far Trump will go. He has dispatched his special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow for the fifth time for last-minute talks, and on Friday, Trump admitted he did not think sanctions would have much impact on Russia. In the end, the clock is ticking, not just for sanctions, but for the delicate balance of power and diplomacy that has defined this era of U.S.-Russia relations.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said he is not opposed to meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but stressed that the appropriate conditions must first be created for such talks.
I've been repeatedly saying that I, in general, have nothing against it. This is possible, but before that, certain conditions should be created, and unfortunately, we're still far from creating such conditions.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Thursday defended his country's right to take part in any potential peace talks between the Russian president and the U.S. president. In his evening address, he said Ukraine's participation was essential. Later, a White House official suggested the summit might not happen unless President Putin also agreed to meet Zelensky. Retirees rallied in Buenos Aires in Argentina to protest what they called inadequate pensions, voicing frustration over soaring living costs. Security forces used water cannons and pepper spray to disperse the demonstrators near the National Congress. Moving on to a different matter, several regions in southern France are experiencing a wave of widespread wildfires, catching residents by surprise and causing significant losses, particularly in the agricultural sector. Usama Ayadi reports again.
About 100 kilometers from the border with Spain and near the Mediterranean Sea, northern France is experiencing one of the worst disasters of the summer. The cause is the forest fire that officials say is the largest since 1949. Due to strong winds and dry vegetation, the fire spread at an unexpected speed, engulfing wide spaces, leaving behind ash, fear, and questions that still linger.
I've never seen fires like these in my life. There have been fires in Narbonne, but never on this scale. These fires raged a lot. I'm not sure how big they are. If they don't exceed 10,000 hectares, I don't know.
Since Tuesday, August 5th, the fires have spread to more than 16,000 hectares, an area equivalent to 1.5 times the size of Paris. The fires here have destroyed dozens of homes, killed one person, and left 3 others missing.
Personally, I only lost the forest, while my vineyard and equipment survived. My in-laws lost their homes in Saint-Laurent de la Cabrieuse, which was one of the first to burn, and their neighbor died because she stayed in her house.
Residents of the affected villages have also had to fight the fire themselves, using whatever means they can to save their homes and farms from the raging flames, which are causing large plumes of smoke and material losses.
We saved the house, but we had to fight all night. We haven't slept in 2 days fighting. All we're doing is putting out the fire here because it's flaring up again. It stops and then flares up again.
While firefighters and citizens struggle with the near impossible task of extinguishing these fires, French authorities say that global warming and drought in the region are the main causes of the largest forest fire in nearly 8 decades, and they are awaiting the results of the ongoing investigation.
And finally, to a lighter note, Algeria continues its presence at the Expo 2025 Osaka with a pavilion that reflects its rich heritage and ambition for a sustainable future. The pavilion focuses on key themes including health, food security, clean energy and development, offering a journey through Algeria's cultural diversity. More details with Bilqis Khattash.
In a sea of global pavilions at the Osaka Expo 2025, Algeria stood out blending tradition with a modern twist. Every corner seemed to glorify Algeria's past, while also demonstrating that our country is a solid and reliable partner for tomorrow's ventures.
Algeria's participation in Expo 2025 Osaka in Japan reflects its commitment to expanding its international presence, particularly in East Asia, which represents a promising market and an important strategic partner. This global event is a unique opportunity to showcase Algeria's rich cultural heritage and tourism assets, as well as its diverse economic and investment potential.
Stepping inside the pavilion, you're taken on a digital journey through Algeria's green hydrogen projects, food security plans, and housing initiatives, all wrapped in an interactive setup that breathes new life into the country's ambitions.
I was surprised that Noor was speaking in Japanese. Even her lip movements were perfectly in synchronization with her words.
I know nothing about Algeria before, but this expo allowed me to learn new things about this beautiful country.
And because culture is front and center in this showcase, it came alive through the rhythms of the Ishraq troupe, filling Osaka with Algerian chants that struck a chord with both local and global audiences. As the Expo rolls on, Algeria reaffirms its global presence, making it clear that the land of martyrs is all about openness and partnership, proudly carrying its cultural identity into a brighter future. indeed blending deep-rooted tradition with bold innovation. Algeria is truly turning heads at Expo 2025 Osaka, putting its forward-looking vision and vibrant culture in the global spotlight. This is Balqis Nadakhtesh reporting for R24 News from the Algerian Pavilion in Osaka, Japan.
That wraps up our news program for tonight. For more updates, you can always visit our social media platforms as well as our website. Islam Sid signing off. Night.